Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war.
Welcome to Comic Books and You. Today we're going to cover issues 2 of Merry Boys, the comic which we started reviewing last week. This is an indie comic that was crowdfunded through Indiegogo originally. That features a quatuor of Templar Knights in modern day Britain. This is basically just a continuation of issues 1. Let's just get into it in the regular way. We get to learn a little bit more about our Merry Boys here. We learn that they are a result of a failed abortion. Medically, I have no idea what an actual doctor would do with these types of embryos. I'm not sure what the idea would be here. Would it be dangerous for the mother, especially since they seem to be quadruplets? All of them have physical issues at the same time. If you were a doctor and you were looking at this, in the end, how would it end as a doctor? I honestly don't know. I don't want to get into the abortion debate too much here, but this is a an odd situation. Anyways, uh, they were born ready to fight. From the moment they were born, they already had their ability to process alcohol into superhuman strength. Once again, maybe spinach would do the same thing, but they never tried it. And we also learned that they also know how to drive, which is a good thing. But then again, if they drink and they're drunk driving, is that a good thing? Um, they're not impaired by the drinking, but I don't know what the laws in Britain are either on driving under the influence. Anyways, this is just what we learn about our main characters in this one. More importantly, Fighter Mike Parrish is, I would say, the main character for this particular book more than the boys, as he is the center of attention for most of it. We didn't have his first name in the first issue. Here we see that it's Michael, which is the Archangel of War or the Brigadier of Heaven. Kind of fits Father Parrish's responsibilities here in this story. He was a somewhat idealistic priest, but now he's got a bullet lodged in his noggin, and that seems to have been what affected him quite a bit here. Lead poisoning is a bad thing as well. Who knows? What he remembers after his injuries that he was a Templar, and he learns that he has a superior combat skills even when injured. We see an evolution in his character after being in a coma. We actually have a villain in this issue in the Chief of Police, which is a very subtle character here with the toothbrush mustache. Extremely subtle, once again, like most of the messaging in this book in a way. He's a new chief of police in Basham, and he doesn't quite understand how the city works yet, and he seems to want to show off that he can take care of business. Unfortunately, he doesn't really have the trust or the respect of his man, as we see them abandon him after his interaction with the Church of St. Barton. As far as the story goes, it kicks in immediately at the end, after the end of issue 1. Father Parrish wakes up from a coma. Seems to have been for a few months, from what they're telling us in the book, which is quite possible after a traumatic injury like this. They're not able to pull the bullet out, but he doesn't seem to have any real negative issues out of it, and they let him go as if he was not having any issues anymore. While he was in a coma, he remembers living another life as a Knight Templar in the past. That's where his ideas of fighting a war against corruption comes from, basically. On his way back to St. Bart, he is ambushed by a bunch of dregs of Basham, various thugs of various identities, I guess. But unlike before, he knows how to fight, and he trounces the opponents very easily. The fight scene is quite entertaining here, actually. But he does want to avoid more fights, so he decides to jump over a fence into a fam care clinic, which is a family care abortion clinic, more or less. And the dogs are raiding the trash bins, who are filled with aborted children. I'm not sure that's how it would really be in real life. I mean, those are biological waste, and usually those are extremely secure. But then again, if we look at the history of Planned Parenthood in the U.S., that hasn't been the case all the time. Enraged, Father Parrish chases dogs away, beats them up a little bit, and he hears whimpering coming from one of the bins. He pushes it over and he finds that there's 4 children that survived an abortion huddling together for warmth. He brings them to the hospital. The doctor notices all the deformities on them and the cleft palate, the hands and feet being too large, their heads having no follicles, etc. And he basically says that they probably won't survive the night. Father Parrish sneaks back into the hospital in the middle of the night to baptize them and give them the last rites. And when he gives them sacramental wine, well, it revitalizes them and gives them a new lease on life and leads them to attack the security guard that was trying to get Father Parrish to leave. Fast forward back to the present, and Father Parrish gives instructions to his ward as to what they need to do to fight a war on corruption and horrors of Basham. But they just respond that, well, that's what they've been doing for a while already. And one of them realizes, hey, yeah, I just remember what else we did last night. We actually set fire to the fam care clinic. Unfortunately, the police does realize that they're probably the ones doing this and decide to perform a raid on St. Bart, with the new chief of police leading his officers in. They have a bit of a kerfuffle. The boys are basically knocked into the church by a water cannon, but they basically barrel out of the church in a car and start roaming around town looking for more crimes to punish. The book itself ends with a group of graffiti artists running from the police after they graffitied a very nice picture of the Mother Mary on the side of the police station. I have a feeling that police station has not long for this world at this point. As they're running away, they give a light to an old woman, the old woman that the boys helped cross the street earlier. But in a puff of smoke from the marijuana joint, we see the head of Baphomet come up. The old woman then disappears into the sewers under the city. We have a finish the introduction of our characters and we see the real start of their war against the crime and corruption in the city. The next book, Beefheads, which is currently on a second chance campaign, doesn't quite continue this story, but gives us other stories in the life of the boys, which I actually find more interesting. We'll see how this goes if there's a new campaign in the near future or anything of the sort. I am interested in seeing where this goes and how it's going to go. The cover here is a lot more introspective. It's more of a character piece in a way, with Father Parrish taking center stage. We've got the police monitoring him in the back, which reflects what happens in this book, kind of. We've got the pitbull drinking the whiskey as well, but that doesn't happen in the book. But there's quite a bit of alcohol involved here. There's great attention to details here. There's the rubbish on the ground is really, really good. A weird thing to say, but the rubbish on the ground is really good. Same with how Father Parrish seems to be walking there. The birds over his head, really well drawn and really well executed. This is still a very good cover, just very different from issues 1 cover. The title in red really pops out a lot, would attract attention quite a bit. Might have put it at the top rather than the bottom. Not sure. But I mean, those books are not meant to be on spinner racks in the end. They're crowd-funded books. Whenever we're dealing with covers for crowd-funded books, sometimes what you'd expect from what you need in a spinner rack or something like that, it's not quite the same. On a stand rack, however, this is a very good position for the title. As far as the Peritext goes, it's the same format as the first issue. Top of the line paper, half decent binding. I would have preferred cardstock or cardboard on the cover just for ease of care and ease of protection. There's probably a monetary issue behind this, And I'm not sure why this was split into two books personally. This very well could have been one larger issue with, once again, a proper binding and a proper cover, hardcover, harder cover, maybe not an hard cover. Something to think of maybe in the future. I know B-Feds is a cardboard cover, no, cardstock, and a different type of paper in it. The last few pages are used to show one panel cartoons with the characters from Chubb. They're all pretty good. The attention to details on a lot of those is really magnificent. That's what you notice a lot with the art in this particular book, or this particular book series in a way. There is quite a lot of attention to details. Minor things are going to be very well represented, and there's a lot of work being put into it, which is very interesting. Of course, since it's a black and white work, a lot of it has to be done with contrast, and it's done fairly well as well. So I've gotten no major complaints there. I'm not sure it would really work as well in color, and of course color is far more expensive in the long run. As far as artistic merits go, I'm going to start with a complaint here. Issue 1 had a lot of surprisingly good background. Once again, a lot of attention to details on those background. This issue, it's a little bit weaker. We've got a lot of white or one color backgrounds. The background we have in the hospital is good, functional, just not as good as it could be. When there is backgrounds, however, or when there's a lot of background work to be done, it is top of the line. And once again, there's attention to detail that can be done. When we look at the left ear on that one full pager ear, uh, the work on the clouds in the back is very, very good. It's especially when you think that all of those are done traditionally. They're not digital drawing; they're actual drawings, from what I understand. I do enjoy the character work still in there. We have all sorts of characters and all sorts of looks for characters. And we get the big list of the people that Father Parrish wants to stop. And we have all the caricatures of everything here. They do represent fairly well what those types of criminals or low lifes would be: the chav, the police, the gangster, the foreign types. Always funny to see that. Pervs, criminally insane, the communists, the Nazis, so everybody's included. Football firms, politicians drawn as a rat, pot smokers, people into aliens, goths. So you've got a wide range of people, of course, that they want to stop. But here in the art itself, we see how well represented those all are as well. And it is an interesting caricature, and it's an interesting work overall. The various action scenes in this are also very good. We have a good understanding of movement and violence, since most of those action scenes are really close quarter brawls, just kicking dogs at the top, fighting the police at the bottom with the cricket bats and the tackling and the boot. We're not looking at gunfights. We're not looking at a more stylized violence. This is gritty, over the top violence. And there's a proper use of onomatopoeias throughout the book. I've only really included the one with the car here, and it looks very well done overall. And the onomatopoeias are not taking over the art itself, they're included into it, which is a thing that I've found in many modern comics get to be a bit of an issue. When we see the devil head of Baphomet here, it's really good. It does look like a goat, but it looks scary at the same time. Fun aside, more than likely known by the author, the worship of Baphomet was the one of the primary reason the Knights of the Temple were exterminated by the French crown. I am not surprised that this is included here. Page real estate is really well used. We have larger panels and full pages to bring attention to key points in the story. A few of the pages have very nice atmospheric art in them on top of the character art and everything else. Overall, no issues whatsoever with the panel work. It's not the most fantastic and top of the line. It's not the most basic and boring. It's extremely functional. And when used properly, shows all the talents of the artist. If we look at story elements, here again, subtlety is not the name of the game. Okay, I don't mind things being unpretentious like this every once in a while, but I can see how it would irritate or make some people very uncomfortable. A lot of the unsubtle things in there would get you canceled in many other realms than independent comics. This is a thing that you need to keep in mind if you do start on reading this particular series. Major changes in personality after traumatic head and brain injuries are really common in real life. In this case, it's used real well. This is something that you could almost expect in real life here. Not a supernatural event, no nothing. People having these kinds of injuries sometimes come out completely different. Many psychological courses go over the story of the guy who got a railway spike driven into his brain, basically turned him from an amicable old man to a completely psychopathic individual. This is a nice way of bringing it, and it's really shown as it's not explained to us through text bubbles or anything. It's just a thing that you normally realize as you read the book. Again, we could go on a whole debate on abortion rights, on right to choose or whatever. But here, our main character is a Catholic priest, so it's perfectly normal that he is strongly opposed to it. We understand that he is opposed to it and opposed to it on a completely physical level. Here, truly as a show don't tell, they don't tell us that he doesn't like it. We see it through the story, which is probably what we really want to have. Of course, once again, this is as unsubtle as can be. As I said, I'm pretty sure human embryos and things like these are not just kept in regular bins at the back of a care clinic. At least that's not how it should. Being a doctor's kid, I sometimes feel weird when I see medical professional being shown as immoral people. Here, the doctor who's looking at the boys as Father Parish brings them to them is interested in them with them on a really clinical sense, but nothing outside of that. We are stuck in a world where many doctors see themselves playing God. They actually, some of them really think they're gods. This is a thing that exists both in the US and Canada, Britain, France, wherever. Doctors are special. Some of them are very good, some of them are less good, and some of them are completely immoral. Another issue that is brought up here is most socialized medicine system throughout the world, uh, where they see stats as the most important guideline overall over the life of their patients or life of children. Once again, a lot of show don't tell through this story. You get that through 4 panels, more or less, and we've got the 2 panels here where we see the doctor, who I would think is probably a lush with the red nose there, and the nurse with quite a bit of makeup, being a bit vain. Are those horrible and evil characters compared to some of the other people we see in this book? Probably not. But then again, we see once again they're probably touched by the moral decrepitude of Basham. I personally don't understand why an hospital would not let a priest tend to abandoned newborns. It might be a British thing, it might be just me being idealistic. And I'm pretty sure Father Parish at this point would be ready to take them over. It's just an odd thing that I found here. As we were saying, the grand list of wicked people is hilarious in its design and through the fact that it literally targets everyone from the law to crime with the police and gangsters, from the far left to the far right with the commies and the Nazis, football firms, which are extremely common in Britain, the criminally insane. We've got literally everyone on there. Even minor crimes would be punished here a little bit like you sometimes have in real life vigilantes. We do see the police here represented as of 2 minds. They're pretty much shown as a negative influence here overall. But we basically have that morally corrupt chief of police, and we do see a few morally corrupt cops that are trying to catch the graffiti artists. But it does seem like the vast majority of them are just following order, and they don't really want to get into it with the church. They just don't want to get hurt. They just want to do their jobs. So we have that range of police officer, even though it's not really going into depth into that. And yes, the police chief does have a striking resemblance to someone who should not be named from the 1940s. I'm not sure I enjoyed the introduction of supernatural elements at the very end of this book. The boys are unusual, but they're still grounded in reality. The very similitude here is they've got that genetic condition, and it's what drives them for everything else. The introduction of the devil here and actual demons makes it a little bit weaker that they are fighting the moral issues of Basham, and basically tells us that there could be a physical reason why there is moral issues in the city. Again, this is not something that is repeated in the second book in BFEDS. So I'm not sure if this is something the author is trying to distance himself from, or it just didn't come up in the stories he was wanting to write for BFEDS. The pacing here is still pretty good overall. We're starting directly at the end of issue 1. The flashback is well paced. We lose no time or panel here. We have a lot of show don't tell, and we learn about our characters through what he is doing rather than with exposition, like we saw in Alpha Dogs earlier this week. The discovery of the boy by Father Parrish is well paced, but the part with the hospital scene could probably have been a little bit shorter. There's almost a full page of the boys attacking the security guard. This might have been better if it had been maybe a bit shorter, and the bit again fighting against the police being a bit longer. Maybe to give us more introduction on the various boys themselves rather than them as a group. It's still well paced as a comedic fight scene and as a comedy, more or less a caricature. I find the pacing overall really good, but it should probably have been a single book rather than two separate issues, in my opinion. I truly love this book series, and it's even though it's not something that I can share with my kids or with a lot of people in general, that's what is normally my benchmark, as if it's really good or something that I would recommend. Would I be able to share it with anybody in general? This particular book is the kind of thing that I would recommend to people with a bit more of a mature sensibilities and probably a dark sense of humor. Even if we had just gotten those two books, if I had known of the original campaign, I would have bought them and I would be happy with what I got and I would eagerly await the next book. I'm actually already eagerly awaiting whatever follow up comes after BFEDS. So I'm really happy with this overall. I want to say as well, this kind of comic would go really well in a Spirou or Tintin style magazine. Uh, of course, they'd have to tone down a bit of the bad words and the alcohol drinking, maybe. But in other magazines like this, those would be very effective works overall. Maybe introduce a short story every month, every 2 months. Might be difficult to do it weekly unless it's a gag strip at that point. And I'm not sure this would work really as well as a gag strip. But it would work really well as a short story, 3 to 8 pages, maybe. Who knows? That would be something to discuss maybe in the future. As I was saying, the follow up work is somewhat different and it's still extremely enjoyable. We will likely talk about the stories in BFEDS at a later date. I've committed more or less to doing a few more European comics in the coming month, probably Franco Belgian, and I still have my standard books that I want to cover, like Unstoppable Doom Patrol and Peacemaker. So we'll see how it goes overall, but I will try to keep working on those Mary Boys reviews, as it is a work that like I said, that I do enjoy. Thank you very much for listening to me for so long. I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day. Keep on reading comics, keep on enjoying them. I'll keep analyzing them, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.
The cross of Jesus going on before Christ the